Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'll be discussing my thoughts on issues arising from Prime Minister's questions yesterday. But as Keir Starmer for Labour and Ian Blackford for the SNP focused on two very different, albeit crucial topics of national interest that Boris Johnson is of course fouling up. On this occasion, I'm going to just discuss Blackford's choice of topic, as it's related to Brexit. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So rather than go over Starmer and Blackford's exchanges, as I usually do, not always, but usually, I'm actually going to focus on Blackford's. Both leaders, as I say, were tackling questions of critical importance, but I think I will cover some of Starmer's questions on my video that inevitably will be done around about the weekend, I think, on the Indian variant. After all, with it becoming the dominant variant in the country now, there are serious concerns, and I don't just want to jam two very different topics into one video. But Blackford picked on our post-Brexit trade deals with, Australia. Australia and New Zealand are very much doing the rounds at the moment. The focus very much on Australia as the larger market. And perhaps not as urgent as the pandemic, but certainly presenting more long-term harm to the country. Essentially, Boris Johnson has carried out the latest step on the path to obliterating farming in the UK, or Britain at least, or the bits of Britain that remain part of the UK, or whatever's left is called. Take your pick. Not that the news this week came as a complete shock, or it shouldn't have done. Before Brexit, the Conservatives' favourite economist Patrick Minford said that the government would have to abandon farming, amongst other important sectors of our production economy. The government had already announced that they would phase out EU subsidies. Brexiteers, including Johnson, initially said that the UK government would simply take over the administration of farming subsidies. When people tried to point out that the EU gives subsidies for you to do this stuff, the government, don't sweat it. We give the EU money to do that. When we get the money back, we'll just portion it out, or nothing will change. Farmers won't lose out. In fact, it was promised that farmers would do better. And when we left the EU, that abruptly changed to, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to give you the payments, sort of. We're going to make them less and less each year. Then after about 5 years, it'll be phased out completely. And it was also framed in such ways, well, you can have this less and less money each year, or you can have a lump sum, and then not get the payments later on. Basically, it was a bribe to, can you just stop farming? Leave the farming business. Here's a lump sum. Go and do something else. Don't bother us anymore. At the end of the day, Johnson's pursuit of a US trade deal had to mean destroying our farming industry. So the fact that a tariff-free trade deal with Australia, New Zealand, and quite frankly anyone else may hasten this act is neither here nor there for him. Doing the rounds yesterday was the somewhat pitiful response of the National Farmers Union, who said that they were given assurances by Johnson that he would not throw farmers under the Brexit bus. Seriously? I cannot express adequately just how dumb you had to be involved in politics at that level and ever consider Boris Johnson to be a man of his word. Don't get me wrong, I can understand less interested members of the public only just cottoning on because most people don't follow these things closely. Totally get that. But he was sacked for lying as both a government minister and a journalist. Come on, for goodness sake. He is particularly dishonest even by the standards of journalists and politicians. So anyway, Ian Blackford's first question. He noted that if reports of the deal with Australia are true, farmers will lose their livelihoods, rural businesses will collapse and families will be driven off the land. Can the Prime Minister, he said, categorically rule out that his government is prepared to sign up to a trade deal that would at any future point guarantee tariff-free access for Australian lamb and beef? Yes or no, he said. Well, rather than a yes or a no, Johnson decided a boorish attempt at ridiculing Blackford was the way to go. Now, I do not know who Johnson has advising him on his preparation for PMQs anymore, but whomever it is doesn't seem to realise that ridiculing a question about the threats to people's livelihoods is absolutely not the way to go. Sure, in politics, of course, you need to ridicule the opposite side, but when they are asking a question that is very much about the livelihoods of people, you're supposed to be a bit more solemn about it. The Scottish Parliament already have a mandate to work on a second Scottish independence referendum, which will surely occur within the lifespan of this Parliament. And then he banged on about belief. You don't believe enough. Why doesn't he believe in what the people of Scotland can do? He seemed to genuinely implore it. It wasn't just a tired line. He seems to actually believe that belief is what you need. They could be exporting Scottish beef all around the world. Yeah, nice one. Send the beef thousands of miles away to countries that already produce lots of beef, instead of on your doorstep to countries who don't. That makes environmental and economic sense, doesn't it? How did we end up in a situation where brainless pricks can make such brainless statements and it's not called out to the wider public? It's like, at the moment, before Brexit, we could sell that beef and lamb to a load of countries who don't really produce a lot of beef and lamb. Now he's telling us instead what you should do is you should send it 10,000 miles away and try and sell it to countries that already produce so much beef and lamb that they need to export most of it. He also said he thinks there's a massive opportunity in free trade. I don't want to split hairs here, but didn't he say there was a massive opportunity in Brexit? But 5 years later, he's having to hire someone to find what it is. Then Blackford quoted the president of the National Farmers Union talking about the betrayal of their members by the government. He talked about the fact that many Conservatives privately agree that the deal should be dropped, which is surely true. Makes you wonder why they don't oppose it, really. But anyway, Blackford simply appealed to the Prime Minister to drop the deal. Naturally, of course, it fell on deaf and particularly thick ears. In fact, Johnson even seemed to make things worse by saying that fisheries were in for a great time as well as farming. Comes down to this: first fishing and then farming. Both poster boys for the benefits of Brexit that are actually not so much benefits as existential threats. Also, both are industries with the heavy machinery required to create real problems if they decided to protest properly. And no, I don't mean driving into London. Unless, of course, you're going to drop something very unpleasant at Boris Johnson's feet. But of course, they're not protesting. That is why Johnson is doing this. He knows they will moan and gnash their teeth, but ultimately do nothing because he's convinced them that losing their very livelihoods under a Tory government is still somehow better than the alternative government. There is no other explanation. Farming is massive in the Tory heartland. So fishing, I could sort of get away with it. Yes, they've now captured some fishing communities. But traditionally, farming is massive in the Tory heartlands. This is why Blackford is probably accurate to say that many Tories are not at all liking this prospect and they would prefer that Johnson drop it. The party simply cannot afford to have farmers turn against them. It would be electoral suicide to lose the agricultural lands of Middle England. So the government obviously believes that farmers will never turn on them, no matter how much they screw them over. So far, they appear to be right. And Conservative MPs must be willing to believe it as well. Otherwise, they would absolutely rebel over this. This also does nothing for the UK even. Like, it's been calculated it might be worth a boost to GDP of 0.01% in 15 years. That is basically zero, because you slap the uncertainty on that and it could be a contraction of GDP, you know, and that, I tell you what it's like saying, because I like putting these things into terms that people can understand in terms of their own expenditure. That's like saying to someone who's on the average UK wage, do this bloody stupid thing that will hurt you badly and you might get £3.86 in 15 years. But you might also lose a quid instead. That is literally what this is. Abolish your farming industry for no net gain. Could be a slight gain of 0.01% when you charlatans are long gone from office and some other poor bastards have to face up to it all. So what are they doing it for? A cruel and pathetic way to try and say how great Brexit is. They wanted their US trade deal. President Biden isn't currently that bothered, so they'll take anything. And what's more, everyone knows it. This deal is so crap for the UK because Australia know how desperate we are. This is how the UK ends, isn't it? In a whimper, as group after group are shafted by this authoritarian government. These gammons who boast of Britain standing tall against the world won't even stand against their own government. Truly spineless, embarrassingly pathetic. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. Until next time, I'll see you later.